Alright, so here we are, the path of Lamed, and we are well into the path workings at this point. So to begin with, let's talk a little bit about the path of Mem that we did last week, or 3 weeks ago, I guess, at this point. How's everybody been doing with that? The path of Mem represented a shift in focus, although the path of Lamed returns us to the personal to a certain degree, with a slightly different emphasis upon it. But did anyone have any interesting experiences to report on the path of Mem? Brendine says Mem was beautiful, used it often. No one else has anything to say. Kevin says that he's done the meditation several times now. How did you enjoy it, Kevin? Or what did you discover? Excellent. Someone just popped in, so we're discussing experiences with the path of Mem. Robin just said, curious if others were indrawing anger, frustration, hostility from the world around them. Did they feel an increase in negative feelings within themselves? It's an interesting question. Ideally, that's not what the purpose of the exercise is, but certainly one that can come about if you're doing it from a place in which you're not as balanced yourself in your approach to it. Ideally, it's not a personal matter at all, but simply a matter of function. Robin says, had little problem myself, as usually in the morning, perform Barden's balancing technique. Why don't you describe that technique, or what you were doing specifically? I'm curious. Kevin says, I seem to bring some anger into myself where I could balance it and heal it overall. Certainly. To an extent, the anger that we see outside of ourselves is a mirror of things that are going on inside of ourselves. So, certainly healing it within ourselves is a way of approaching it. Brendine says, no, it did not for me. Used it in the matrix, especially. The prickly and burning increased greatly. Then released and exchanged the energy. And when you say the matrix, you're talking about a healing circle that you guys do. Just for future reference. Yes. Okay, Robin gave us a page number in Initiation into Hermetics by Franz Barden, pages 127 to 129. But I was wanting you to describe your personal experience of it and your, the way that you approach it. Robin says, well. At any rate, it sounds like you guys were having some interesting experiences with him. Did anyone find that their world was becoming more peaceful outside as a result of working with the recording? Juan says, yep, found life in general finding its own balance. says, I no longer felt like I have to juggle studies and other general things. What do you mean by that, Juan? Juan says, the meditation seemed to place a great deal of inner peace within me. Good. He no longer felt like he had to confront things head on. So Robin says the reason she used the balancing in the mornings to help prevent too much negativity building up within herself. She came in contact with much negativity and drew it in, imagining it transforming into a peaceful energy and then sending it back out around me. Okay. So no one found themselves challenged by this at all. Brendine says that she always uses the balancing before doing anything in magic to prevent it from disturbing her energy. Certainly there's the possibility with this particular suggestion to feel overwhelmed by it, or to feel Roger from Ohio is saying he's not receiving the audio at all. Let me just type him a message. Brendine says that much of the incoming negative energy was dissolved as it hit my energy field. Now, did anyone feel like they really didn't encounter very much negative energy? Did it seem like it just sort of wasn't a presence? While we're approaching things as positive and negative, we're still locked in a polarity, and we can become trapped by that very easily, falling back down into the path of Ayin, or even lower. Robin says, I guess I was focusing on gathering it in rather than sensing it being around. Juan says that he agrees with Brendine about the energy being absorbed in a positive way. Brendine says it wasn't a presence, but in healing others and focusing on them, it brings it into my focus. Robin says, throughout the past few weeks, I've been drawing it in, transmuting, and sending it back out. Kevin says, I encountered quite a bit of negative energy, however, I felt that balancing occurred. Good. So I think we're ready to start discussing the next path. I'm not sure, some of you may have already gone on an excursion on that path, although it hasn't come up. Brendine adds that she was enjoying the increased power to discharge and heal others. That's good. It certainly is, a lot of what we're here for, to bring positive energy in, or bring energy that's balanced anyway. It seems like people are dropping out of the discussion here for some reason. Looks like Juan fell out. That's strange. Never seen him do that before. Hopefully he'll be back. Well, it seems like there's a very active coming and going in and out of this this queue, so hopefully people will be coming back if they're disappearing and so forth. But at any rate, I'm glad everyone's been having some interesting experiences with the Path of Mem, and now let's begin to talk about the Path of Lamed. Is that Juan coming back? Oh, good. So, Path of Lamed. In the recording in relation to this, what we're working on largely is letting go of some of the karmic judgments that we have had added upon us and that we've added to ourselves. There is a significant amount of material in our consciousness that relates to guilt about actions that we've taken, or just simply responsibility that we've taken on due to actions that we've begun processes that we didn't begin in a conscious way. And Juan says that Lamed felt like being in the movie Jacob's Ladder, got to see a great deal of the harm and even horrors I caused others in my lifetime. And while that's certainly a component of it, I almost want to allow, I'm not going to discuss the contents of the recording too much because I feel like it's one that contains a little bit of drama that I don't want to spoil. But I do want to say that, you know, the purpose of it is to move through that material in order to free yourself of it, rather than to just put it up in front of yourself and you know, feel badly about it. The purpose of it is to look at it from the perspective of an enlightened awareness, an awareness of the whole, and see that those things that are karmically tying us to negative things that we did in the past are no longer relevant to the being that we're becoming. And the purpose of it is forgiveness and balancing the equation so that you're not operating from karmic debt quite as much, or from guilt. So the path is from Tiferet into Geburah, which is a path of power, you know, of balanced power. And in the tarot images, I'll start with the Rider-Waite. Let me just write to Roger here. So I don't know why. I think he actually already had left by the time it happened. I'll send him an email telling him so he can download it if he wants. Hopefully, assuming that this recording is working. I think it is. I'm seeing little bars going up and down on the recording. So at any rate, the the classic image from the tarot, from the Rider-Waite tarot, of the Path of Lamed is the card Justice, and this is actually one of those interesting paths that got changed from the regular order of the tarot by the Golden Dawn, and the reason being that Lamed very much resembles a balance, even though it's actually an ox goad is what the word literally means, but it resembles in a lot of ways the sort of scale of Libra, and Libra naturally falls at this point in the tree, so that's where the association comes from. But at any rate, we see Justice here, and she's got in one hand a sword, and the other hand is scales. Now, she is coming out of Geburah, which is the Sephirah that relates to divine justice, punishment, force, power, these sorts of things. And so she does have a bit of a harsh side to her, for sure. It's interesting that most of these cards do not portray justice as blind, even though the traditional image of justice that we're familiar with in the U.S. anyway is justice blindfolded. But she does have the sword and the scales. And also, interestingly, in many depictions of justice here in the United States, she's also nude, which has upset certain conservative politicians who've made attempts to get her covered in various ways. One says, "I have always thought of justice's sword as a double edge, and that it cuts both ways." Well, certainly, the thing about justice is that it's fair, and so it does cut both ways. If you're going to create a set of rules and laws, you have to follow them as well, which is why it ends up cutting both ways. But at any rate, in a more purely universal sense, it's a representation of balance, of creating an equilibrium in things. For every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. This force in the universe. And so personally, as we're traversing it, we start to encounter the material that, even though we've seen the light, we've seen, that there is a unity to all things, that there is that the self is ultimately just simply an expression of universal life, universal expansion. We still have things that we've done and that we've said and that we've committed ourselves to that aren't always in keeping with that realization. Habits or relationships that are destructive, and these sorts of things that need to be balanced out, or relationships that were destructive that we were in the past and that we feel like we're still making up for now. These sorts of matters need to be balanced out. My goodness, there's a lot of talking going on. I'm gonna take a little look and see what people are saying here. Kevin says, "Isn't justice blind because true fair justice should not be influenced by outside visual influence?" Yes, that's exactly why. Or not just visual, but just that it simply just is the rules as they are, and you aren't influenced by anything, whether it's someone's attractiveness or their money or anything like that. You are not influenced by it because the laws simply are the laws. Brendan's saying, "Are you saying that cause and effect from the past is of no effect now?" Absolutely not. There are things that we've set in motion in our lives that are inevitably going to go to their conclusion, and we cannot resist those. However, there are parts of ourselves that are in resistance with some of those things, and there are parts of ourselves that don't work effectively because we have not equilibrated our own consciousness. And there are things that we can remove ourselves from karmically. There are, debts that we feel that we have accrued that are no longer serving us. That we can, allow ourselves to be free from. Not all things. There are certain obligations that are useful, Certainly in creating greater harmony in the universe, there are, you wouldn't want to just pull the plug on everything that's going on in your life and go sit on a mountaintop. That stuff needs to happen over time. This is more about matters that are from the distant past that are still influencing our behavior and our actions and our feelings towards the universe. And someone comes in. Carla. Hi, Carla. Welcome. Kevin again is asking about the image of justice. Is it nude because all of justice is exposed, and that it is open for the world to see and trying to be understood complete from the outside? Absolutely. Partially that, and partially just because it's typically drawn as a Greco-Roman style, or drawn. It's typically sculpted in a Greco-Roman style in which their gods and goddesses were typically nude. But I think that metaphor is appropriate too, and probably one of the reasons why it has maintained that exposed breast, because it's exposing itself. It's not a hidden set of rules that you don't have access to. Everyone has equal access to what the rules are, and as long as people behave by them, everything goes smoothly. It's only when we hide things, or we don't have a clear set of rules, and just some despot decides what is going to happen and what's not going to happen, that life becomes confusing and hard. So absolutely, that the iconography of that is very intentional. Justice is blind because the rules don't they apply to all people. There's no group or person who is not subject to those laws, and the laws are open and clear for everyone to see. Brendusa says she will trust the divine justice, not human justice. Well, certainly that's a justice that is complete and contains this blind justice without any sort of human interference with it. However, we are all subject to human justice as well, so we need to at least maintain as much as possible a semblance of the divine justice in the human justice. But I mean, the people who crafted that image were attempting to model what divine justice would be, which is that it simply follows the laws of the universe as they are, and does not, as Jesus points out in his ministry, God shines his sun down on the just and the unjust equally. So I mean, everybody has the opportunity to succeed or fail through their own actions and their own merits. The opportunities are there for everybody, and that's true divine justice. Now, in this, along these lines, and back to Jesus again for a moment. I know some people are big fans of Jesus, and some people are not. There's an interesting lesson that he has in I believe it's in John, and it's only in John, and some people actually say that it was inserted later into the biblical, or it might be in Luke. But at any rate, there's only one book in which it is, and it's the story of the woman who's going to be stoned. And Jesus says to the people who are stoning, let he who is free from sin cast the first stone. And they all sort of wander away. And he says to the woman, which is the part of the story that gets less attention, what he says to the woman. The greater attention is given to the fact that the hypocrisy of the people who are wanting to stone is there. But an equally important lesson he gives to the woman. He says, "Go and sin not again," which the divine is willing to forgive us completely when we sin, but we aren't really forgiven if we continue along the same path. Not that the divine isn't willing to forgive us again. We simply are just accruing the same karmic debt again and have to ask for forgiveness again. And so our trajectory is in a less than ideal direction when we do those sorts of things. So it's a complicated thing, and it's one that theologians suffer over quite a bit. Does the divine forgive us each and every time we sin? If we break a religious rule. Now, many of us are not involved as much in these religious rules, but there are certain things that are universal. If we murder someone, are we going to be forgiven by the divine each time we ask for forgiveness? And the answer is, if we change our inner being, so that that would not be something that would be possible to do again. Absolutely. If we simply ask for forgiveness and then go and kill another person, we haven't done the work. We're just asking to be forgiven. So, and this is what this path is really about. It's about forgiving ourselves and changing, so that if we continue along the same trajectory with the same behaviors, we haven't really done this work. We haven't balanced the equation. We're simply saying, I'd like to be forgiven, and I'm going to do it again. Kevin says, faith without works is dead. Sure, that's James. Very underutilized bit of scripture there in a lot of people's minds. But anyway, this isn't a Bible lesson per se, particularly not a New Testament lesson. But the essence of this path is one of forgiveness. It's one of setting things right. It's one of taking the weight off of one's shoulders for one's past behaviors, mistakes, even perceived ones. All the mistakes that you can possibly let go of in your mind. However, it's important that you put that behind you afterwards, or the work hasn't really been done. So if you if you hurt someone in the past and you'd like to let go of it, this recording is an opportunity to do so. But if you continue holding on to it, or you continue behaving in a similar way, you will have temporarily let go of it, but you'll just be recreating it. So it's important to really permanently let go of some of these things. Rurik says forgiving, not forgetting. Well, I mean, that depends on the context. There's certainly some things that can be forgotten safely, but some things that would be important to remember the lessons that were learned, sure. Juan says, that is the very feeling that I was left with after finishing with that path. Carla says, you can't do any of this without getting yourself out of the way first, and learning to forgive yourself and allowing forgiveness from the divine are equally important. Yes, and Carla, I mean, this is your first time attending this class, and I actually have all of the recordings for the previous classes up on my website, but I haven't created the pages for downloading them yet. But they're all there, so if you'd like to listen to some of the past ones, you'll see that we've actually worked on some of those areas already, so we're kind of in a midway point through this series of things. Juan says, being able to forgive myself and move on with life. Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely the point of it. Robin says, once one begins to realize the effects of karma, do things seem to right themselves more quickly as future mistakes are made? Well, I mean, that's interesting, because the more one realizes the effects of karma, hopefully the fewer mistakes one makes, because one sort of sees the larger picture. But certainly, it's the more that you see through the ego, the more that you see through the little self, the more the future mistakes will still happen, because the little self still is acting, but the less that you'll feel the karmic effects of it. So, waiting for people to say more things, but they're not. So I'll just continue talking. The method that's used in here, again, I want to let you guys kind of go through it and experience it rather than discussing it too explicitly, because I feel like it's something that is useful to experience as it is. I mean, after the first time, obviously you can use it again and you won't have the kind of psychodrama aspect of it, but it's still useful to use. But I think that it will be of benefit to just go through it. Kevin asks, are the paths interwoven within each other? Like, I felt a lot of balance in Mammon. Now this one is about balance. Well, all of the paths are essentially, in some ways, the same. I mean, they're all basically about letting go of things that are almost all of them in some way are about balance. So certainly they are interwoven, in that the same lesson is being taught in 22 different ways. But the hold on a second here. There we go. Certainly these paths, Mem and Lamed, both lead into Geburah, and so specifically deal with the area of life that we call justice, and deal with those two. I mean, those matters from two different angles. One from Hud, which is the intellectual area of the mind, the mental sphere, and Tiferet, the sphere of fusion of enlightened oneness, or the feeling of oneness. Brendusa says, coming back in unity and not separation. Brendine says, holding things from the past mistakes has always seemed to skew my view and actions currently. Absolutely. I mean, that's what it does, literally. We when we approach the universe from the position of what the past has told us about it, we're seeing a distorted representation of what's going on. We're literally seeing things through the lens of the past, whereas if we just experience the universe as such, we are experiencing something completely benign and just simply what is. Juan says, I have thus far done it 3 times, and each time it felt like letting go was less and less of an issue. It was a trip to see faces I had all but forgotten from my past come forth, to not realize just how much I clinged to the past in one way or the other. Brendine says, when I let go of those feelings, I was able to be a better balanced mother and more accurate in judgment and facts today, not manipulated by my kids. Sure, and certainly those who have kids, there's a lot of karma there, and a lot of ability for our own mistakes to color our world, because the things that we've done out of the best of our limited ability to help them to grow don't always work. The children don't always do what is best for themselves, and it's very easy to feel personal responsibility for that. That isn't really accurate, especially when we have adult children. Which I don't, but I know that you do. Whoa, things are blowing up here on the thing. Hold on a second. Robin says, Juan, the things you found you were clinging to, were they good or bad things? Just curious. Juan says, mostly bad, allowing myself to believe I was right even when completely wrong in the matter. Robin says, I find I cling to bad things and try to correct rather than cling to the good and enjoy it. Thank you, Juan. Brendine says, certainly, and they could use them against me. LOL, when I let go, they were shocked by my changed reactions. Diana says, parents don't always know best, they just think they do. Right, well, parents, are always doing the best that they can do with the limits of their own conscious awareness of the universe around them. We're all conditioned beings. Everything that we do is conditioned. Everything that we do is the result of the inputs that we've received. And since all of you here are on a path to personal growth and to self-improvement, in some way your parents have done right by you, since they've set you on a path of growth, whether intentionally or not. Brendusa says, yes, it is all conditioned in with personal agenda, indeed. Yeah. But I mean, personal agenda isn't even really personal, Brendusa, because we're all conditioned. So the personal agenda is really an agenda that's far beyond the personal. It's just simply the agenda that has been manufactured through the conditioned responses of everybody that goes back thousands of years. So, we're all simply moving forward and attempting to correct and balance what we can. And if we take the Kabbalistic model of the tikkun le'olam, we're trying to, fix that which was broken from the very beginning. Brendine says, consciousness is everything, and if we hold things from the past, it steers our present and skews it horribly. Yes. Robin says, indeed, Brendine, when letting go of something, I've noticed the shock it produces in people continuing to deal with me. Brendine says that too. Brendine says, agreed, Robin. So, now, I want to mention that the next several paths that we're going to be working, in one way or another, deal with this issue of karma. And that's kind of where we are in the tree, is the matter of hopefully, in working with the different paths to Tiferet, we see to a certain extent, at least, a glimpse of the fact that the true reality is that the soul is just simply an expression of universal consciousness and not something that we need to really fix. But at the same time, we are in conditioned reality, and we are on certain trajectories. And so the next paths deal with the matter of the things that we have been making happen in our lives through blindness and ignorance. And each one takes that a little bit further. And so with the path of my brain is going blank here. The path of the ones that lead to chesed. Anyway, they deal with issues of the shadow and issues of the universal forces that are pushing us forward. And at that point, the course becomes much more simply just unfolding aspects of spiritual essence, because once you kind of have looped through all of the karma, you're just simply exploring the divine. Brendusa says, good, I need this so bad. Awesome, yeah. I mean, and the thing is that, the work isn't going to be completely done by the time, I mentioned this at the beginning, by the time that we're working with Keter, we're not going to be completely finished with the work of Malkut, okay? So, we can't expect everything to be done in this, but certainly we'll have stirred the cauldron of transformation pretty dramatically by the time we're concluded with this. Brendine says, the shadow, our dark side of our person? Yes, that's not the next one, but the one after that, I believe, is deals with that pretty directly. And then we are moving. I believe after that we're moving completely into Chesed, and from there crossing into Bina. So we're moving completely into the transpersonal very soon. There'll be very little to do with the personality anymore at all. Brendine says, undoing karma and its effects should shift our reality greatly. Absolutely. It does. And the funny thing is that it doesn't change that much either. It changes everything in some ways, but at the same time, we're still leading a human life, and various things happen, good and bad, too. It's like, there's a book that's actually, I think, a very useful book for anyone on a long-term spiritual path by a Buddhist author named Jack Kornfield, and it's called After the Ecstasy, The Laundry. It deals with the matter of, realizations that come, and then the sort of normal life that one has to deal with afterwards, and the juxtaposition of those things, and how, in truth, we are humans and doing a human life. Juan says, or speeding up beneficial karma. Yeah, absolutely. We can bring positive effects into our lives through letting go of some of the limiting thoughts and bringing more positive growth thoughts into our consciousness through these very paths, which we've discussed in the past. Maybe discussing a little bit more about that as we go along once we finish the upward journey, and we certainly can do that. Brendine says, shucks, LOL. She's saying shucks, that she's not going to completely be free of all things. But the thing is, Brendine, the less that you feel identified with the struggles that are going on, the less that they really have any meaning. They're just experiences. Robin says, life itself can shift our reality, just remaining aware. Absolutely. Brendan says, starting with beneficial karma to outweigh the old deeds. Yeah. Well, and that's here's the thing. We're moving backwards up the tree, right? So in a way, moving downwards, you move from clearing away the old karma in Lamed to adjusting the balance in Mem with the exercise that we've been doing up until now. Kevin says, so in other words, the good things you did in your past lives can be brought to light and you will reap rewards. Is that right, Juan? And Juan says, damn right, Kevin. And he smiles. But the thing is, if you think that you've only done good things in your past lives, you're probably not being very realistic about about your past lives. Juan says, if you fear your karma, then you have already given reason to fear it. LOL. Agreed, Juan, says Robin. Very true, says Juan. Agree with Jason totally. So here's the thing: we all have been terrible bastards in this life, and in countless incarnations into the past. And there's no reason why we shouldn't take responsibility for the actions of the worst people, even if we weren't directly them. They're still a part of our human karma, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's no reason not to forgive that stuff. It was done in ignorance. Yes, we've also been saints. And there's no reason not to take responsibility for all the most saintly things that were done throughout the history of humankind. Juan says, I don't know if I read it. Just as we've been a bastard, we've also been good. LOL. Robin says, a lot of cleaning up from the past, yet once aware of it, we can work on it diligently now. Brendine says, we can use our actions as correcting the collective karma. Absolutely. And that's what we're going to be working on, right? Brendusa says, thank you, Jason, for saying that. Indeed, if we've been so good in past lives, why are we back here for more work? We are here because we need to correct things of the past. Agreed on the collective karma, says Robin. Yeah, and here's the thing. There's doing good deeds, planting a tree because people have cut down trees. But there's also simply just accepting that the trees were cut down, forgiving those that cut them down, and trying to do better in the future. Robin points out that we're back here because we may have been unaware in the previous lives. The fact of the matter is, we're back here because we're back here. And fussing about why we're incarnated is silly. We're incarnated because we wanted to be incarnated. We're incarnated because, our parents had sexual relations and a sperm and an egg got together. That's why we're here. Juan says, the divine recognize others with the gift of life. As such, not all life is a repeat because we are bad. It may well be a reward. Juan says, bingo, something. Renusa says, that is denial, Robin. I don't know if I agree with that, Brendusa. What Robin was trying to say is that, it may be possible that we could be incarnated in a different realm, or to not be incarnated on Earth, but that we weren't aware of those choices, or even of the negative things that we were doing that would cause us to return. I have a strong belief that people always think that they're doing the right thing. I don't think there's anyone who says, I'm going to do the wrong thing. I know that this is the right thing to do, but I'm going to do this other thing. Unless they think that they just simply have to do that wrong thing in order to get to the right thing in the future. Like, for instance, if they need to rob a bank, which they know is wrong, but they need to do it because they owe this guy some money and they don't want to die, or something like that, or because they have a terrible drug habit that just needs to be fed, But were they to really look at the situation in a realistic way, they wouldn't do any of those things. They're caught in a set of things. They're unaware that there are other possibilities for them to do. And so I think what Robin is saying is true. We're not always aware of what the impact of things that we do are. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't need to be, punished or corrected if the things that we're doing are destructive to, the whole world. But it certainly means that we can forgive when the person is ready to be different. We can move on from there. And sometimes it's very tough to do that, especially if we've been personally harmed. Our body, our possessions have been harmed by the behavior of another person who wasn't treating us in the way that we deserve to be treated. It's very difficult. And yet, ultimately, until we do, we're trapped in that negative cycle. Brendine says, so you don't put a lot of weight into the past lives, but stay present today and focused on today, this moment. Brendusa says, I do that. For me, I think the purpose of any kind of past life exploration is essentially in order to do just this sort of work, to balance the scales, to let go of things that are hindering us, to discover patterns that may be being repeated in our lives now that we don't need to repeat, that we can just simply learn from. Certainly, I wouldn't look at the past as a farm from which we can we can harvest all the good deeds that we did and utilize them for something, or to beat ourselves up about all the terrible things that we did. Those are just simply things that happened along the way, and ultimately now is the reality, this moment right here. Not talking about tomorrow or yesterday, but literally right now, the moment that you're experiencing presently is the important thing. Robin says, I meant that in a previous life we were unaware of how we to come back to our next incarnation. Brendine says, I am weary of past lives because of things being put into someone's mind, in my experience, can really skew reality today and take the focus off today. When you say weary, do you mean wary? Or tired weary? Okay, that's what I thought. And Robin says, now we may have an awareness of how to do so. Yes, I agree. I wouldn't, because I think there's a tendency with past lives because of the fact that it's a highly subjective experience. If we're not on a growth path in our lives right now, where we are wanting to look at things and we're wanting to take responsibility for stuff, there's certainly an opportunity to play victim and say, oh, the reason that I beat my wife is because I was a wife in my past life and I was beaten and I just am repeating that pattern and there's nothing I can do about it. Or to play the hero and say, in my past life I was a remarkable guru, which is why I've been gifted with all these spiritual gifts in this life and why you should listen to me. Both of which are totally not constructive at all. Juan says, "This has truly been a remarkable class, and the understanding you and everyone has shared is equally remarkable. I've personally seen a great deal of transformation, and so have many close to me. Thank you so much, Jason." Well, I appreciate it, Juan. But I mean, it's your own work that is making the transformation. Rindusa says, "The power of the tree of life reality." Brandine says, "Highly subjective, suggestible into something that is not constructive to growth today, it seems to me." Well, Brandine, I think you and I have had this conversation kind of, outside of this context, and I think that it can be utilized very well in the right hands and with the right approach to it, and that is an approach within which it is a part of a larger tool set in which one is using it as a way of exploring specifically for maybe causes of certain things that are going on and allowing it to be healed in that space. And under those circumstances, we don't even have to regard it as a reality. The past life may not even be something that actually happened. It's simply just a therapeutic tool for letting go of things that one is holding on to right now. And in that case, it can be very useful. But utilized for either of those other two reasons I mentioned, or probably some others as well, it can definitely, lead one into places that aren't super useful. Juan says, "The past is nice to look at as long as you're just giving it a look and minding the mistakes so as to best avoid them now. However, far too many people live in the past and refuse to move forward, allowing life to teach lessons anew. This is why I rarely touch on past lives. Too easy to get stuck in it." Yeah, it's true. Now, this particular path that we're working on now, Lamed, doesn't really have anything to do with past lives, per se. Although certainly it wouldn't be impossible for material to come up that relates to past lives, but I would focus your attention on this life rather than past lives. Juan says it's team effort, my friend, and I think he's referring to making the work happen. And Robin agrees. And Brandine says karma as past. And I don't know, here's the thing. The word karma is just a word. It points to something. Does it point to something that's real? Perhaps. In some cases. Does it point to a lot of sort of loops of information that don't really have any purpose in being explored? Certainly. For instance, like punishments from past lives and so forth being karmic. There's just simply no purpose in that. It's an excuse for why some people, grow up rich and happy and sexy, and some people grow up poor and ugly and, unlucky. That's what that aspect of karma is really about. It's about excusing the universe for being unfair in certain ways. Now, I don't see that as being particularly useful to dwell upon, since we're just simply experiencing what we're experiencing, and trying to place judgments on whose life is better or worse is a really silly subjective game, because we're not in anybody's other's experience but our own. So making one's own life something that is beautiful and full of purpose and something that brings greater light into the world is really the only thing that one needs to worry about. And so this whole idea of do I have bad karma because my car broke down? It's really just a waste of time. On the other hand, exploring yourself, as in this recording from this week, and saying, are there things that I'm doing that I'm holding on to from my past that are making things not flow as well in the present and into the future? That certainly can be useful. Robin says, for myself, I know that holding on to things that are not helpful for my growth was a huge issue until a few years ago. This class is continuing to help me work on that. Well, I'm glad, Robin. It's something that we all deal with. There's from our earliest memories, we've been making mistakes. And the funny thing is that our organism is keyed to remember mistakes much more readily than triumphs, simply because mistakes teach us better than triumphs do. And so our memories are just filled with things that we did wrong, or that we could have done better. This sort of stuff is stored in our memory more because of the fact that it has a useful teaching component to it. And so, if I were to reverse this and say, everyone, I want you to think about all the best things that you did in your life, all the times when you really succeeded against all odds, it would be a lot more strained to come up with, a big list of those things. It's an exercise you might want to try. Just simply write down all the things that you can think of, the mistakes that you've made in your life, make a list of those things. And then on the other side of the paper, make a list of all the things where you felt like you did really well, that you did an excellent job, that you received a lot of praise, and that you felt really good about every aspect of what you did. Most people would find that second list pretty sparse. And there's really no purpose in that. But like I said, it's something that genetically seems to be the case in order to help us to make fewer mistakes as we move through life by maintaining the records of the old mistakes. Juan says, "You're right, but it allowed for one to look into the past and let go of it." Robin says, "Reality, though, is a matter of one's perspective." Pretty much correct. Oh, I'm sorry, folks. I'm going to sneeze in a second here. Brendine says, "So I hear not to spend so much time on it, focus on today, and work on the work in front of us today." Kevin says, "Live in the now and forget all else. Live in transforming self into a remarkable person." Brendine says, "That feels good. A purposeful life today, happy and joyful." Robin says, "Agreed, Kevin. Well said." Juan says, "Well said." Diana says, "If car broke down," this is going back a few minutes, "if car broke down because owner didn't keep up maintenance, then yes, that is karma, consequences of one's actions." Yes, absolutely. But sometimes one buys a car. This happened to me. When we bought a car a couple of years ago, and within a month of us buying it, the battery died in the car for no apparent reason. We didn't leave it on or anything; it just died, and so we were left in a very stranded position. And it would be easy to say, "Oh, this is bad luck because of whatever, I stole someone's car in a past life or something." But the reality is, it just happened. The batteries died. Thinking about my own personal relationship to it isn't necessarily that useful. Juan says, "Like my name is Earl, LOL." I guess that's making up and doing the right thing into the future. Brendine says, "Even in having a hero in our past life doesn't make us today as happy or joyful today. The focus is to be who we are today and focus on working us as we see ourselves today." Now, here's the thing. What I think you guys should focus on a little bit is letting go of some of the focus on the self at all. Because, thinking about yourself and the story of whether you're a good or a bad person, or whether good things or bad things happen to you, or whether you're doing enough to make the world a better place, and these sorts of matters, it's just maintaining a false story. The reality is that you simply are awareness moving through the world. So Robin asked an interesting question. You guys are getting very philosophical today. Interesting, Diana. This is referring back to the car breaking down. What if you borrow the car and it broke down because the owner did not keep up the maintenance? to your time. Well, I mean, Robin, if you wanted to tie it back to karma in some way, then perhaps you have befriended a person who is irresponsible, and so you're responsible for having, created a relationship and taking on the responsibility for something that you did not, that was not maintained properly. Theoretically, you would know that you have a friend who is a person who maintains their vehicle properly, and you have a friend who's the type of person who does not. The person who does not, maybe borrowing their vehicle is the smartest thing to do. Juan says, making the list and doing the right thing. It's why I made the reference to my name is Earl, a list of bad things that he attempts to correct the person. Oh, okay. Robin thinks that the list is an interesting thought, I guess. Juan says, we are awareness moving through the world. Brendan says, that is good, not to focus on ourselves. Enlightenment is increased awareness in this moment. Robin says, philosophy is such a mind bender. Producer says, I love you, Jason. Yes, we are awareness, pure consciousness connected to the source of ones. We are a spiritual being having a human experience. Being in the now is total awareness of all around you. Enlightenment to the moment, understanding of all that is in the now. That was Kevin. Yeah, I mean, all of that is true, and but just simply, more simple perspective, just not attaching a huge story to one's life can be very freeing, and forgiving oneself for some of the things in the past is a useful component of that. I agree with Juan. I think that you guys are contributing just beautiful thoughts to this class, and it's really an extremely meaningful exchange. Juan says, got to love how in each class everyone here raises the stakes in learning and sharing. Thank you all very much. Now, with that being said, I think that we ought to suspend our conversation until our next class, and work on the path of Lamed, which is approaching the divine scales and beginning the process of balancing them out in one way. Kevin, thank you for being here. A lot of people writing big statements here. Kevin says, thank you for the blessing of this class. I appreciate all your meditations and all you have done for me. Thank you, Jason, and thank you all class members for joining us. Robin says, huge thanks to all for being part of this class. Enjoy these immensely. Have wonderful weeks until we see each other again. Be safe. Thanks, Jason. Juan says, thank you once more, Jason, for hosting this group and sharing with us your wisdom in this subject that in many matters has been a blessing. Bernine says, thank you for making our lives such amazing blessings. I appreciate all you have done in our lives. Well, I appreciate all that you've done in my little life, too. So the scale is definitely evenly placed. Let me see here. Wanted to. I think 2 weeks from now is going to be the next class, but I did get scheduled for a couple of Sundays in this coming month, so I'm not 100% positive. I'm thinking there may be some sort of a conflict with the next class. Since you guys are it looks like someone just left. Since you guys are the core group of people that come in here, if there is a conflict 2 weeks from now, would you rather meet next week or 3 weeks from now? I just want to throw that out to you. Okay, so you'd rather have a shorter is better than longer. Okay, I'll keep that in mind. And like I said, we're going to have to just leave it flexible at this particular moment because I don't have the schedule in front of me right now. But I know that there were a couple of Sundays that seemed like there was stuff going on. I think one of them, my daughter's having a dance recital. So, yeah, I mean, my original intention was to have these be weekly, but I'm actually glad that we've slowed it down a little bit because I think it's giving people an opportunity to really grok this material. So, anyways, Am I still broadcasting? Are you still hearing me? Because I just got a weird message on my computer. Are you guys still hearing me? Okay, great. So I will talk to you either next week or in 2 weeks then, depending on the calendar. Okay. Blessings. Have a beautiful Sunday.